Today's topic is advanced and visual thresholds. We're going to talk about the thresholds in grids, graphs, thresholds, and dashboards. First thing I want to do is create a simple report or use a report. Let's use this category sales report. I was just looking at it and I think it's good for our purposes. Let's run this report. It has multiple metrics, which is exactly what I want to demonstrate multiple items. First thing I want to demonstrate is this here. So you first highlight the metric. You have something called a quick threshold. The quick thresholds, as you can see, will apply immediately with the option you chose. If you scroll down, you probably need to change page buys to see different thresholds applied. There we go. So that's the quick threshold. It's available for most users in the web as well, even what we call web professional users. There's also an advanced threshold option that's available for desktop users and web professionals. Okay, so if you're not sure what this is doing, they're just utilizing the top 20 and lower 20. So this is top and bottom 20, top and bottom, top 20, bottom 20, and the mid-tier layer, top and bottom. So this is utilizing the top 20 and the bottom 20 when it's a quick threshold. If you don't believe me, just click here and go to profit, which is the first one in this case. I'll say top, bottom, between, okay? And it's replacing it by a quick symbol. Here are the default symbols from desktop, but in the web, you can see which exact symbol is being used, okay? So that's the first quick threshold. We'll come and revisit it in the web in a second. So let's do one more thing. Let's do some thresholds here, but this time I'm going to do custom threshold. So you saw how I created the custom threshold. I either click here or from data, okay? So in this case, I want to say, let's create a custom threshold, and I'll say for anywhere where the revenue, in this case, or profit, we'll just use profit, okay? So let's say anywhere where the profit is greater than, I'm going to use a value, let's just say 10,000. I want to give it a solid background of, let's use bright green, okay? Okay, so anywhere where the profit was greater than 10,000, the profit forecast gave it a bright green. So notice this is 9 and this is 12, but the threshold is based on the profit values, okay? So that was the solid background. Let's do another threshold here. And I'm going to say threshold is also based on itself. It's greater than 10,000. I want it to be solid. Let's just use another distinct color, trying to make them as distinct as possible for demo purposes. And a font, let's just use a brown font, okay? Alright, now let's say I want to add a second. You can either create a new, or you can duplicate, copy, paste, if you want to repeat and reuse. And I'm going to say less than or equal to 10,000. In this case, I don't want it to do anything. Actually, let's just put it default. Okay. What I want it to do is a quick symbol. Just use black square. Okay. All right. Now, obviously the revenue in electronics was always greater than 10,000. Let's change it to 50,000. so we can see what's going on. So I can always come back and change the values here. Remember, I want to also change it here. So only where it was greater than 50,000 it was purple, otherwise it gave me a black box in its place. Notice that the subtotals are not doing anything, okay? But if I want to add it to the subtotal level, just go back to here, highlight the one I want to add, and just add it to either subtotal only or both metric and subtotal. You have to add it to each one of them individually. It's also critical to understand that order of thresholds is critical, especially when you have overlapping thresholds. It goes from top to bottom. So if you want something to be applied first, you want to move it up, okay? And again, thresholds are applied once a threshold is met, it is applied, and the rest of the thresholds are ignored. So you got to be careful. It's basically it meets a condition, it stops. So if you have multiple thresholds that you want to operate, you might want to add them within. And the way you do that, you just click here and say and or profit, for instance, or profit is greater than, say, 20,000, then apply this, etc. Okay. So here we go. Now the subtotal has the same property as the regular value because we applied subtotal. Okay. And for now, let's just save this and go to the web and see what we can do with it. Okay, let's keep this open, come back to it later if we need to. And this was in the subject area, sales. There it is, new. Alright, so here's our quick thresholds, our solid background, our background applied with a quick symbol, and to subtotals. Again, I told you about these, you can see them in the web, so let's revisit them. Right click and look at the threshold in an advanced format, and again, here you are, the quick symbols, you can see them here. You weren't able to see them in the desktop, they were just saying quick symbols. So again, it's just one of those things that you have to deal with. The web might show you a little bit different information than the desktop. And here it's applied at the metric level, and you can modify this quick threshold as well. You can play with the values, you can play with the design. Now, let's go to a graph and look at this here. So here's the graph. The default graph is the bars, and it's got 4 colors, but then none of the thresholds were applied, okay? So how do we take care of that? Well, let's just go to our threshold design, and let's, for example, look at this. This here, let's apply, there's a symbol here for graphs, and see what happens. Notice nothing changed, okay? Well, graphs will only take in consideration, this is critical, background colors if applied. So this one has a background color. This one does not. Let's apply. Okay. So notice the one and only threshold that was applied when enabled for graph was the one that had a background color modification. Okay. This is critical because graphs will only apply background thresholding properties. Everything else gets ignored. So if you're using a symbol and you want it to migrate into a graph, you're going to have to add a background color to your symbols. That's why quick thresholds are disabled. This one lets you toggle on and off your thresholds. okay, and it works for graph and grid as well. And let's go back to our grid, talk about the visual threshold. There's this option here, which is called the visual threshold, which also operates by right-clicking. So you could always right-click and go to visual. This is not too different than the advanced threshold we created, except it's visual. I don't like it. Most developers will not use it. It's basically the same thing, but it just, instead of, you know, creating it in that advanced structure, it's letting you visually create it. Some users might want to use this, but as a developer, you probably want to just go into the advanced threshold and just play with it here. You have more control than you have more control here with the colors and the texture and the values, etc. than you have here. And you can allow users to toggle on and off these things. It's very critical to let them toggle on and off if you want them to see the values, but if you're trying to hide something intentional, you might want to disable it, okay? And once you disable it, it's gone. You can't, for a user, they can't come back and enable it, okay? Again, and it's an all or none, so you got to be careful about these different things, okay? Accidentally drilled here. Alright, speaking of drilling, there's one more thing that I wanted to show you. Let's go back to the desktop. If you have a drill option and you want your, like for example, you drill from month to day, for instance. Let's see if this report lets us drill from month. Yeah. So a drill like this. Let's go here and click on drill on a specific month. Okay. So notice that our thresholds are applied as we drill down. And that option comes from here in your data, report data options, general. In the drilling, keep thresholds while drilling, and the default or yes was applied. If you said no here, when that user drills, like we did on month, this would not be applied and this would not be applied at these two levels. Okay, so again, drilling can be controlled at the report level. Just to make sure that you understand that advanced thresholds are only for web professionals. If you don't have that, that's when these visual thresholds can come into play for your users. I also want to talk about quick symbols or images and replacing symbols with images. One of the locations where you can find your images or add images in MicroStrategy is your MicroStrategy web. It depends on which web environment you're using. In my case, web ASPX, images, and there's a bunch of folders that come out of the box, or you can create your own and add them in here. But let's say you just want to use out of the box. This one has, here's an image, for example, 1, just for simplicity, 1. So let's look at the path here for this image. Okay. So it's under the web folder, under the images subfolder. So what I want to do is I want to say replace these texts with that one folder or one image. So let's do an advance. In this case, I want to modify a quick symbol with an image, and let's make it relative path. Images, I believe that was it. Images and one dot and the extension. Okay, see if this works. Apply it. Okay, there's the image. It's called, apparently it's a MicroStrategy default and it's listed as 100 places. Might not be relevant to this business case, but just for kicks, we're using the first image that was out of the box, and then apply it here. There we go. So instead of a symbol, we were able to apply an image in the threshold as well. So again, these probably won't render in your desktop, but they will render in web. So you just want to be cautious where it might just be replaced with the word image as a placeholder when you're running it into grid. Then actually we can save and take a look at it quickly just to validate that point. Okay, let's go back to our desktop environment and let's edit this and run it quickly. See what it does. So it's just saying image, it's a placeholder. And you can right click and modify as well from here. The only disadvantage is you won't see it. And again, you have the option, is it relative to HTML directory? Is it an absolute path? Is it on a network or on the web? Obviously, if you're saving images in a relative directory like the images folder in your MicroStrategy environment, you probably want to use this one right here, unless you otherwise have a certain need for something else. Okay, so that takes care of the different environments and different settings. You can also just replace the text with nothing, an empty. Basically, it's pretty much hiding your text, and this way when you apply your thresholds, you simply, instead of giving an image, you just get empty values instead. This is also a useful threshold to utilize. Okay, one more topic that related thresholds that is critical is when using templates. Let's look at the templates available in the tutorial. So let's look at this guy. Search for dependence. So it has a report that depends on it. Okay, and let's edit it. Okay, so it's got revenue, revenue forecast, etc. So what if I wanted to create a threshold on a metric that's not available here? Well, in a grid, you can just add it to the report objects. But here you don't have report objects. Remember, it's a template. So what do you do when you don't have those objects available to us to kind of use for something like embedding thresholds? Let's say you want to create a threshold on a profit, for instance. So let's go to a metric here. And let's look at profit. So if I add profit here, then I can use it in a threshold. Otherwise, when I go to my thresholds, I'm only allowed to select something already on the template. So what do I do? Well, here's a trick. You can add profit, but you don't want it to show in the report, right? You don't. So you do Control G, okay? Do a fixed first. Go to profit, hide it. So now you added profit, but you don't see it. And guess what? Now you can go to your threshold and say revenue where profit, and it's available in your threshold, and you can create a threshold off of it. So the reason you have to do this in a template, or you might want to do this in template, because you might not want your template to show a value, but you want your threshold to take advantage of it. So this is a trick. You add it, you hide it, and then you can use it in your threshold. And one last thing to mention, if you're using a report in a dashboard and you're not using a shortcut for your report, you're just adding it as a copy to your dashboard. What happens is when you modify thresholds, no matter what you modify, whether at a template level or report level, they will not take effect in the dashboard. You might have to edit it and create those thresholds in the dashboard level. So be cautious when you make changes to reports that are used in dashboards. The thresholds may not trickle into your dashboard most of the time unless it's used as a default copy or a shortcut. But if it's used as a copy, it will not make any changes. But if it's used as a shortcut in the dashboard, then it will take in the changes. So you just got to be careful how you create your dashboards and whether you're using shortcuts or not for your graphs or for your grids. Thank you very much.